I am so ready for this conversation with Dr. Brooke to talk about subject we don't talk about enough, alcohol. So, Dr. Brooke, thanks for coming on and sharing some information that you have in your new book. And it's just something I am very passionate about to share. So I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love these conversations, and I especially love these conversations in the wellness world and in specific segments of the wellness population, like athletes, for example, because so often we are focused on the exercise itself, we're focused on nutrition, and alcohol is this thing that is kind of a separate topic, and we aren't always looking at how it's affecting us. So I think it's a really important discussion, regardless of who you are. If you are someone who drinks every once in a while, if you drink socially, if you drink maybe daily, that's okay too. We're going to talk about all of that today.
Yeah. And your book, I'm sure, is making a huge impact already. And I think Andrew Huberman probably started creating more awareness on his podcast when he started maybe, I don't know, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, when he talked first about alcohol. And what was a changing moment for you to really get this information? I need to write a book about this and bring it to our awareness of alcohol isn't as good as we think it is for us.
Yeah.
If
What's
you
so
think it's
interesting about that Huberman Labs podcast, that one that came out in 2023, that was actually the most downloaded podcast of the year last year.
Hmm.
So it just shows how interested people are in this topic. But when that podcast came out, my book had already been written. It had already been finished. It had already been sent in. And I was just waiting for the publication date, which was December of 2023. But it really helped. His discussion on the topic really helped spark a lot of more of this discussion in the wellness space, as it should be. And that's something that in my book I speak a lot about. And in my own experience, I am someone who started drinking at a young age, like so many of us do in our teens, and continued that behavior into my 20s and early 30s. And my alcohol use escalated over time. It snowballed from, being more of a social need or social choice to something that really became ritualistic. It became a really important, for lack of a better word, part of my lifestyle. And COVID happened, which we see some really unfortunate statistics around alcohol use increases during the pandemic, especially in women. There's one study that showed a 41% increase in heavy drinking in women in groups of people who were already consuming alcohol. And we're now starting to see the downstream effects. There was actually just a couple of days ago from this, when we're recording this, the CDC released a new statement on the increases from 2016 to 2017 to 2020, 2021, about a 30% increase in deaths related to alcohol, and even higher, 34% increase in particular in women. And this is only over the course of a couple years that we're seeing this increase. And so this is not just something that is reserved for people who are heavy drinkers. For so long we've put this in like a separate other than category of people who are heavy drinkers or identify as having an alcohol use disorder. But really, alcohol is affecting all of us. And it's affecting our health on a daily basis, whether we're really recognizing it or not. So something I'm so passionate about is just bringing more of this to the forefront, not in a way that is, everybody has to stop drinking, but so that we can educate ourselves and make more informed decisions on our health.
Mm-hmm. I have my own story I won't go into, but it was actually at Todd's mastermind group. And Todd Durkin's mastermind group in San Diego years ago when I got adrenal exhaustion, which air quotes, because I read more stuff now. It's like, well, what was exactly happening to me? But it was at a retreat in Torrey Pines, and I went on the party bus and had alcohol. And long story short, it's a chapter in my book, Life is Not a Race. It is a journey. And I was sick for a week and made a big scene on the party bus. I passed out and I was sick everywhere and just felt bad. But after that moment, I realized something was wrong with me at a liver detoxification issues and health issues, adrenals. And gut health and everything. And so it really led me down a path more. What I do now is a health investigator and figure out the why. So how many times have you found that we can look at clues in functional lab testing, as I do blood chemistry panel as FDN practitioner, and see if those are in our optimal ranges and what that means if it's higher or lower than that item, and as well as gut health and looking at how alcohol and liver congestion can be part of that and nutrient deficiencies.
Yeah, and this is such an interesting topic too, because so I look at when I coined functional sobriety, which is the term that I developed when I started doing this work, I started embarking on this work. And to answer almost part of your previous question, I got sober in 2021, and in that process, really recognized this huge gap in the discussion around the health and wellness piece, around the physiology, around what is happening to our body when we drink alcohol. And exactly to your point, Debbie, we often demonize the liver. We say, like, this is just a problem for the liver. And we all make jokes about how our poor livers can't handle all the alcohol we're drinking. And that is really just one piece of the puzzle of what is happening when we drink alcohol. Now, we know the liver is affected because it is the main site of detoxification in the body. And exactly to your point, whenever we are spending a lot of time on something like alcohol metabolism, we are almost putting everything else on hold. We are putting on hold the detoxification of other processes in the body. We're putting on hold the detoxification of excess hormones. We are essentially putting, when we put alcohol in, it is a toxic substance. So it almost gets this priority boarding, if you will, to the liver so that it's metabolized in and out of the body. But the liver is really only one piece of the puzzle. And in my functional sobriety approach, the liver is part of what I discuss in the larger discussion around gut health and digestion and the microbiome. But also alcohol has these other effects on the system, like how it affects our hormones, how it affects our blood sugar, how it affects our body's ability to produce muscle cells, and how it affects our brain's neurotransmitters. And a lot of these things are all founded off of nutrients, and alcohol creates a lot of nutrient deficiencies. And so that's kind of one of the core pieces of it, is that when we are consuming alcohol on a frequent basis, and this could be a few times a week, this could be even once a week, that maybe your body is still having effects of this. And that's what we're seeing now in the research, is that we once kind of believed that maybe this was a substance that had potential health benefits. I say that with kind of a quote unquote. But what we see now is that a lot of that research was maybe skewed. Maybe it wasn't necessarily looking at the right indicators. When they originally looked at the research that showed that people who had one glass of wine had a lower health risk, one of the things that is a confounding factor there is that most people who don't drink, who would show up as someone who's drinking 0 drinks per day, are not drinking because of health reasons, right? So you're actually going to see that as a confounding factor in the research. And so now what's happened over the last 3 or 4 years or so is we're starting to see all this research come out to say, maybe those kind of quote unquote benefits that we saw many years ago are being challenged by larger scale studies, by looking at different population sizes, and really seeing that this is a substance that does not provide any health benefit for us. And in fact, there's never been any argument that anything over that very small amount is actually very harmful to the body in many, many ways.
Yeah, I find that so fascinating when you look at lab tests, and we do as an FDN practitioner and a nutritional therapy practitioner, I always look at more the correlations between multiple labs and look at the client's signs and symptoms and what their goals are, and really put all those missing pieces of the puzzle together. And when so many people drink alcohol, but they don't realize that one drink every night can impact, like I just saw a study someone shared with me, a SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, can be more for women than men, just one drink a night, 2 drinks. Yep. And people don't correlate that alcohol isn't as good or people think it's fine
Yeah.
to drink one glass of wine a night or a cocktail. And then I always have clients say, hey, well, Italians, Europeans, they have a bottle of wine every night. Why is it different here? So how can you help people understand less is more, or not having anything? Like I have a personal rule of if I am going to drink, it's 2 drinks maximum, because over that is never good. And 2 nights a week maximum, and which is just like a Friday or Saturday, not weeknights. So I have my personal rules because of various reasons, including my sleep score and how that impacts my workout the next day and everything else we do. So question is, how do you get people to realize that it's impacting their health? If they
Yeah,
don't.
well, you bring up a great point in that the personalized information and the data, the biometrics, the wearables, the lab testing, this is all really beneficial. And it's a big part of the way that I practice in terms of helping people understand more about their physiology and biochemistry and how that can help influence their choices around alcohol. So, for example, if we are seeing that there are more significant impacts in the body in specific areas, I really believe it helps people make that change because they say, oh, I know that this is, if I have a gut microbiome imbalance, for example, or I have SIBO, this is making it worse. So I'm going to need to cut that out or cut this back if I want to make progress in this goal. And similarly with some of the wearables, for example, an Aura ring that's looking at your sleep score, most people will notice if they drink even one drink, but you'll see it even more significantly with more drinks, that the heart rate stays elevated all night, right? That you're not getting that natural actually rest and relaxation. And that is when I had initially seen that. I had gotten my Aura ring before I quit drinking. That was pretty scary for me to see that my heart rate was staying in the 90s all night and not going down into the 60s or 50s.
But
Go ahead.
question real quick there. Now, when you did that, did you correlate that when you took out alcohol? Because you don't know what you don't know. So if you think that's your normal, you accept that I just have a higher resting heart rate, and I have a lower HRV. Maybe people don't know that they could be better if they took out the alcohol. They
Well,
experiment.
exactly. You'll see that if you start to put the two pieces together, right? And you start to look and say, oh, wow, on the nights that I'm drinking, this is happening. If you're not drinking and that's not happening, and that's the only factor that's changing, then there's a good chance that that's the one that's maybe contributing to that. But even with, looking at other types of blood work or lab testing, we can see effects of alcohol. So, maybe there are elevated liver enzymes, but a lot of people who drink fairly frequently don't have elevated liver enzymes because the liver does a good job at detoxification. It usually takes a lot of brunt, unfortunately, before it will start to show signs of being affected. But even looking at nutrient levels, looking at things like our B vitamins, our vitamin D, looking at zinc, magnesium, a lot of these things are going to be affected by alcohol use. And the really interesting thing is, if you're listening and you're kind of thinking like, well, does this mean I need to cut out alcohol? I don't really know what this means for me, but my recommendation is always, if you have a health goal, whatever that health goal might be, if it is improving your endurance, if it is weight loss, if it is, improving mental clarity, cognition, mood is another big one, that alcohol is something that is likely holding you back. And yes, there is a dose dependent relationship. So the more that you're drinking, the more it's going to be affecting your body. But another thing that I like to share is that even if you're not drinking every single day, alcohol can still be affecting your physical health on a daily basis. And one example of that is cortisol. Cortisol being our body's stress hormone. Well, cortisol, after we drink, after we have several drinks in one occasion, cortisol is elevated and stays elevated for 7 days after that drinking instance. And so that means that our stress levels are elevated even days after we have that drink. And some people can relate to that idea of, you have a hangover maybe after a night out, and maybe it takes you 2 or 3 days to kind of feel a little bit normal. But even if you are only drinking once or twice a week, this is indicating that you're actually staying in that elevated point of stress probably on an ongoing basis. And so I always like to tie it back to, what is your goal? How do you want to feel? What goals do you want to achieve? And then, is alcohol aligning with that? And I know it's like easier said than done to just cut out the alcohol and call it a day. But there's a lot of, and we can get more into this, like right now is really the best time and the easiest time to reduce or eliminate alcohol, because there's so many non-alcoholic beverages and a lot of these discussions happening that really make it something that's less of a less of something that makes you other than, and something that is trendy and I think an important part of the movement in health and wellness.
Yeah. So I want to go back to nutrient deficiencies and get into the gut health. But before we go there, let's stay on this topic, because it's March, beginning of March as we record this. I know a lot of people did dry January, and some people I know did January and February. And March is like the reentry. And I actually have a call with clients today going into the new month. All right, how are you going to approach this? And what is your strategy? And do you feel different if you're adding that alcohol back in after being sober basically for 2 months? So what have you found strategies if people do the dry January, dry February, to get them to understand, maybe correlate, how do you feel? How does your sleep quality feel and look like? And how does your workout performance, and put that all together to help them understand, I'm not going to go back to drinking 5 nights, 6 nights a week.
Yeah, so that's an important part of coming off of any of these dry months is taking this reflection time and saying, well, let me spend 20 minutes or 15 minutes actually writing down and developing some awareness around the changes that I noticed. Because it's really easy to start going right back into those habits. And a lot of times when people join these dry months, or they do a dry January, for example, it is very much predicated on this idea of, you do it for 30 days and then you go back to normal, right?
Yeah, like any diet.
Right. And really the goal is to develop some new habits, new insights. The longer that you go through this time, so if you did a second month, for example, you're going to have experienced even more benefits physically, probably, but you're also going to have experienced more life events, more triggers, and other situations where maybe you had drank in the past. And so the goal would be to take some time and debrief on this sober time and say, well, what did I notice? Did I notice improvements in energy? Is my sleep better? If I have biometrics, am I seeing those changes in my Aura ring, for example, or am I seeing it in my Whoop band? Did I have blood labs done? Did I see any noticeable changes? But also the qualitative things too. So, how's my mood? How are my relationships? How's my job? How's my motivation? How is my connection to my purpose and my goals? And all of those things they're really easy to overlook, especially if we just go right back into our old habits. And so I think from that point, depending on what the person's goal is, setting new goals. At the end of it, is it a goal to go a third month? Is it a goal to maybe try 6 months without alcohol? Is it a goal to then scale it to only once a week, or to only special occasions? And so really setting it almost like you would any other health goal, and not just kind of throwing it back out there. For so long, it's been this thing that we make jokes over. It becomes this very lighthearted thing. And I don't think it's been to any of our benefit to treat it in that way, because it's also made it something that has been really acceptable when so many people are really struggling with this thing. And if you are struggling with alcohol, please know that you are not alone. And please know that there are so many resources to support you, and maybe finding another way to do that. So working with a practitioner, Debbie, is a great way to do that. Finding other like-minded people, and maybe getting involved in some other non-alcoholic beverage communities or things like that can be really helpful too.
Yeah. Changing your circle of friends sometimes is needed, or just going out and setting an intention personally, and maybe sharing that with your friends that, okay, you're going to a hockey game or a football game or something, that, because if those are correlated events, that's a beer drinking. We drink beer. I go out with the guys, and that's going out to a work dinner. It's associated with alcohol consumption. And I think it's rewiring our brain and creating new behaviors. And that's what we're working on changing. But it's just so interesting how hockey, football, sporting event or work dinner, it always revolves around alcohol, and try to switch that. And
And and it doesn't have to be, because this is a scary thing for a lot of people. Like, oh my gosh, do I have to like not see my friends? And what does this mean in all these other environments, work environments, family environments, etc. And some of it is just doing this exploration. And part of the benefit of doing a month or two off of that is you're going to have to force yourself into some of those situations. So maybe you have attended a sporting event during that time. You're going to gain a lot of new awareness. You might say, actually, I didn't like that as much as I want to. Maybe I don't want to do that as often if I'm not drinking, right? Or just even starting to challenge yourself in other ways of, how do I have fun? How do I enjoy myself without alcohol? Are there opportunities for me to meet my friends to have coffee in the morning rather than a drink at night? So pushing yourself to start to explore some of these other avenues and break some of those neuroplastic patterns of the brain that alcohol is associated with fun or with pleasure or with socialization. It's totally possible. It just takes a little bit of trial. And that's where being around other people, community, is such an important part of this too. Finding other like-minded people who are either trying to drink less or don't drink very often, and immersing yourself in, what does life look like if I on the weekends don't drink? You're going to feel really good. You're not going to wake up without a hangover, but you also might find new hobbies or habits or things that you like to do. You might find a lot of pleasure in that too.
I know I stopped going out and late and partying when I was in my 20s because I started doing marathon training. And so I'd get up Sunday mornings, we meet at 7 in the morning. And then I realized, okay, that doesn't go well if I stay up till 2 in the morning as a 20-something-year-old at the bar till they close with friends. And then that's when I started in my 20s, switching my circle of friends were more my athlete friends and not my non-athlete party friends. Just kind of changed it. But I want to get into the nutrition. A couple things before I move on, but you have a great chapter, part 4 in your book, on mocktails and tonics people can read about. I know San Diego has a new bar I saw advertised that is a non-alcoholic bar. And there's so many options. Or like I do club soda and muddled mint. And, there's easy ways to go out and feel like you're having a cocktail and not feel like it. But what are your thoughts on the non-alcoholic beverages? Because there's non-alcoholic beer and wine. And I know someone that is recovering alcoholic, had some of that. And I noticed the relationship with that they were still pounding it, basically. I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea if you have an issue with drinking alcohol. So any thoughts on the non-alcoholic options, if they're right for you?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. There's a huge, huge booming space right now. If you're aware, there's, non-alcoholic beverage stores, bottle shops, there's bars popping up in a lot of the major cities and not major cities. There are mocktails now on most menus, and it's a great tool because it is something that can really help people not have an alcoholic beverage. It can be something that really kind of bridges the gap for a lot of people, and it can provide a great opportunity for people to not feel like they're being left out if they are out with friends and they're still holding a drink. It's not a bottle of water, right? It's still doesn't elicit the same type of maybe reaction from other people. But it is definitely a slippery slope. And in a lot of the traditional sobriety programs, like Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, they've shied away from recommending things like non-alcoholic beers or non-alcoholic wines for the exact reasons that you're mentioning, Debbie. They, can potentially be a trigger for people to maybe have this thing that they really liked or that they previously had a compulsive relationship with, and now they're kind of transferring that over. I have also worked with people who have drank a lot of wine, switched to non-alcoholic wine, and then slowly that just tapered down because it didn't have as much of an addictive nature to them. And so it's really a personal choice for each person, but it's something to be mindful of and aware of, that if you feel like it's something that is becoming a trigger or it's becoming a crutch in some type of way, or that you are feeling like you're maybe taking advantage of it a little bit, is something to keep in mind, especially because some of the non-alcoholic beers still have very small amounts of alcohol, 0.5%, which is very small. It won't get you drunk if you have one, but if the goal is to have 10 and then maybe start feeling something, then that's bordering on maybe a trickier relationship. So they have so many benefits and can be a really, really great tool, but just something that you want to be cautious with and see what feels right for you.
Yeah, thank you. So moving on, you have a great section in your book. Part 2 is functional approach to sobriety and how to eat to change how you drink. You're just talking about alcohol and a little bit of an addictive parts of it, and it similar to sugar addiction. So any addiction, exercise addiction, sugar addiction, we get this endorphin high and get some biochemical changes. What do you find is the main nutrients that are causing getting lower deficiencies related to people that consume alcohol? If it's one drink a night, you talked before about vitamin D and B vitamins, zinc. Talk a little bit about the vitamins and minerals and then any gut health I want to get into.
Yeah, so most of the nutrients are affected by alcohol consumption. So pretty much all of them, all of the B vitamins, vitamin C, D, E, zinc, magnesium, iron, calcium, even things like our omega-3s, even things like proteins and amino acids. And there's a couple of reasons why this happens, and this ties into the gut health piece of it. One is that alcohol is absorbed in the stomach, and so it is going to affect a lot of our digestive enzymes. It's going to affect our stomach acid levels. It's going to block absorption of a lot of our nutrients as well. But also alcohol, because it is such a harmful substance, it creates a lot of stress in the body, and it increases the body's need for antioxidants. It increases the body's need for detoxification nutrients, like some of the B vitamins. And so it is placing this great need on our body and absorbing or almost stealing a lot of the nutrients that we need for other normal processes like energy production and cellular health. A lot of the nutrients that are affected, unfortunately, are the same nutrients that help to produce things like our serotonin and our dopamine and our GABA, our brain's feel-good neurotransmitters. So I always talk about this almost in this idea of a vicious cycle, that if we drink alcohol, it's going to deplete a lot of these important brain supportive nutrients. Because of that, we're going to experience more low mood. We're going to experience maybe more anxiety. And because of that anxiety and depression, we're going to maybe take a drink. And we create this cycle where we're continuing to deplete out these important nutrients and not provide that support for our brain. And so this is where some of these tools of nutrition can be really, really supportive in starting to boost our body's feel-good mechanisms. Again, this is going to happen more the heavier we drink. And so that can mean a couple of days a week where you're having 2 or more drinks. That can also mean 1 drink a day. That's enough for the body to start having this increased need of these nutrients. And so not only is this, something that is affecting our nutrients and our brain in that way, but to answer kind of your further question on the gut and the gut microbiome is, aside from us not being able to absorb these nutrients, we see in the research that alcohol is going to disrupt the gut microbiome. It's going to lower probiotic bacteria. It's going to allow for overgrowth of more harmful strains of bacteria, overgrowth of yeast or candida. It's also going to create disruption in the gut lining. So it is one of the most notorious factors for increasing leaky gut or intestinal permeability. And so we can see that affect everything from, the contribution to autoimmune diseases, to systemic inflammation, to food sensitivities, allergies, and the like. And again, when it comes to the gut, I know you know this, I'm sure you've talked about this before on the podcast, it isn't just about digestion. It is about brain, it is about mood, it is about skin, muscle health, it is about joints, it is about basically every other part of the body is linked back to that gut. And so when this is, again, is one of those things that I think knowledge is power in this instance. If we want to support and improve our gut health and we are drinking several times per week, or we're having a little bit to drink every single day, that is something that's going to be getting in the way of having a better gut.
So if someone's in a gut healing protocol to improve leaky gut, for example, and gut bacteria overgrowth, improve the diversity of their gut, but if they have a glass of wine every night with that protocol, they're almost taking one step forward, two steps back or
Yeah,
more.
well, it's hard to say, right? Because everybody's body is different.
Yeah.
The balance in each person's microbiome is going to be different. It
Mhm.
might be one step forward and one step back, which means you're basically netting out equal, right? And so in that instance, it comes back to, why am I choosing this thing? Why am I attached to this thing? If I really want to support and improve my health, and knowing that this is something that's maybe holding me back, the question becomes, what do I do with this drink, and what is it that I'm feeling like I need this drink for? A lot of times when we're having strong cravings for alcohol, or we have a desire, I mean, there's a few things that can be happening. One is it's habit. Sometimes it's just, I get home, I open up the bottle. It's part of how I shift from work to relax mode. But it's also a question of, are you feeling that need to relax and come down? And if so, what are the other things that we can do to initiate that feeling, so that you're not having to turn to this harmful substance in order to get that feeling? And so, a lot of it is now nervous system regulation. It's, how do I get my body from feeling like I'm pressing the gas to pressing on the brake and tuning into that relaxation? And a lot of the things are what we all know. It's meditation, it's exercise, it's maybe going for a walk, maybe spending some time outdoors, getting sunlight, calling a friend. All these things don't work as quickly as alcohol does, because alcohol has this kind of magic pill effect, if you will. But it's important for us to start training our body to seek healthier ways of coping with whatever that feeling is. So starting to tune into, well, what is the signal that my body is sending me? And this is another thing that I talk a lot about in the book, is never skipping an afternoon snack. Because, and this is like the one thing, if you take away one thing from this podcast, it's this: if you are someone who has afternoon alcohol cravings at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock at the end of the workday, the first thing that you can do to overcome that is have something to eat, have an afternoon snack, ideally high in protein, some good carbs with fiber in them. That is going to help bring blood sugar back up, because a lot of times when that craving comes on really strong, it's usually an indication of low blood sugar. And especially at that end of the day, you might not have had anything to eat since lunchtime, or maybe you had a snack in the afternoon, but it was a high carb sugar snack. And now it's 5 o'clock and you're simply hungry. Your body is sending you the signal that I need something. And the habit is alcohol. And by simply adding in an afternoon snack, I've seen this work with hundreds of clients around the world. It is really, really a powerful tool. And it's just about shifting into this really exploration of, what does my body need? If it's not alcohol, how can I support myself in a healthier way?
Great point. Because I know most people get home from work and they need that glass of wine or something to chill out, transition from work to non-work evening.
So it's about finding, what is that healthier transition? What is that thing that can still provide you a little bit of that stress relief, or still provide you with that shift of your energy or your mindset, but isn't going to be something that's potentially harming your health and maybe improving it?
So I just put on, I have a sweater on, but I have my CGM. So wearing a glucose monitor would be beneficial for people making that change, so you could see, because I would say you don't know, you can't measure. You can't manage what you can't measure, and seeing the difference. Because I think that's the biggest motivator for like me to not do gluten and wheat and grains when I see my wheat zoomer results and leaky gut tests and getting this. Sometimes you have to pay money to see the data instead of just guessing. And that's a little more motivational when you go, oh gosh, this is what's going on under the hood. And now I'm a little more motivated to be a health optimizer and make those choices for myself when I'm trying to improve my future self now. So good,
Exactly.
simple way to do it. going into our audience, endurance athlete, aging athletes, athletic performance and recovery. So we talked about how alcohol can impact, as Huberman helped teach us in the Aura Ring, on sleep and heart rate variability, heart rate. So obviously, if you're not sleeping well, your workout's going to be crappy. At least mine is. If my heart rate is up higher overnight, my workout's going to be different. And my heart rate variability, if it drops really low, it's not great. But also you talked about nutrition and having the B vitamins and D and all this. So tie that together, how that will impact someone's workout. If they're really focused on athletic performance, they want to get faster, stronger, perform their best in their races that they're training for this year. But also I'm always talking about the future self. So what can we help athletes understand? That simple glass of wine every night with dinner might be self-sabotaging you for your athletic goals.
Yeah. So unfortunately, alcohol, as we've been talking about, it's sabotaging a lot of these systems of the body. And muscle health is going to be another one that's affected too. So one of the important B vitamins that is affected is niacin, vitamin B3. Niacin also helps to produce a cofactor in the body called NAD, which is important in our body's energy production cycles, cellular health, cellular production. And because alcohol elimination or removal from the body is very energy intensive, it's going to actually take away a lot of this NAD in the body that is required for other systems to run. So in order for our brain to function, in order for our muscles to function, in order for our digestive system to function, right? And anytime we're taking away these resources from the other parts of the body and putting them toward alcohol, we are leaving everything else in the dust, right? So especially if you're an endurance athlete and you're looking to improve performance, this is somewhere where maybe you are taking one step forward and two steps back, because even if you're doing all the things, you're taking the protein, you're maybe taking supplements, you're taking creatine, all these other things, but because alcohol is taking away a lot of these resources that are needed for muscle growth and muscle development, you might be struggling. And you're probably going to see this more with people who are drinking higher levels, that they are maybe struggling with that. But it's important to note too, because I call this the vodka club theory, that we always think that like, as long as there's no carbs or sugar, that it's fine, that the alcohol is fine. It's not going to spike blood sugar. It's not going to, affect the body in a similar way. It doesn't provide as many calories, et cetera. But it's less about what the alcohol is mixed with, and it actually has to do with the ethanol molecule itself, which is the thing that makes us drunk, right? If we were to take that out of the drink, we wouldn't have alcohol, right? But that is the molecule that is creating this disruption in the system. And so that is the thing that's putting stress on the liver. That is the thing that is affecting our body's ability to absorb nutrients. That is the thing that's affecting our body to produce cells in a healthy way. And again, I don't say this to scare you or to be like so over the top that everybody needs to like completely go alcohol free. But again, it becomes a matter of what are your goals and how do you want to move forward in those goals. If you are someone who is looking to improve athletic performance and you aren't seeing as much problem from alcohol, then you may be someone who metabolizes it a little bit more effectively, or maybe your nutrient status is better. But if you are someone who's struggling and alcohol is a part of your picture, it is a very, very relevant thing for you to consider cutting out or eliminating.
And to improve athletic performance, it's not just the workout you're doing, it's afterwards and recovery and repair, which involves nutrition and cellular repair and quality sleep, because that's when we do the most recovery. So that obviously is a
If
difference.
we are having to recover other areas of the body because of this destruction that alcohol is doing in the body, it's leaving everything else kind of as secondary, right? Muscles are going to be much less important than our body removing a toxic substance from it. And again, the more that we're drinking, the more we are deprioritizing these areas that we think we're prioritizing. But the body has a different priority pattern, right? It isn't, it is, unfortunately, we don't get to decide, well, I want muscles, so we'll, don't worry about the alcohol. The alcohol is something that when the body consumes or the body takes in, it is recognized as a priority, because if it stays in the system, it's going to create more damage. This is the reason why if we drink too much alcohol, we get sick. Our body says, I have to get this out, because otherwise it's going to potentially kill the person,
Poison.
right? Exactly. And so again, if we think about it in that way, even in these small amounts, it is still having an effect. So again, it's something worth considering, and something, again, based on your goals and how you want to feel, and maybe the performance that you're working toward.
Yeah, not do what I did on a party bus, drink too much wine after doing too lower carb, not eating, doing a fasted sprint workout beforehand, and then go try to be fun with everyone. And people, they go, loosen up, have some alcohol. And then you're sick for a week and throw up all over a bus.
Well, and it happens, right? Like this
Yeah.
is unfortunately the way that our society is. We've glamorized this idea of drinking. We've glamorized getting too drunk and laughing it off, and it's something that I think is really changing in the world that we live in today. We're moving into a place where we're seeing the younger generations drink less. We're seeing a huge movement toward sobriety, toward sober curious, toward, dry Januaries and all of this. So we're really moving in the right direction. It's exciting to see, but there's still a lot of knowledge that we can stand to gain, because for so long it's had this health halo, right? But that is changing now in the research that we have today.
And I think it's important, not just for athletes, but, looking at your family. And for me personally, is just watching when parents age and family members age, and they're taking different medications, and they start happy hour at 4 o'clock in the afternoon every day, and just watching people age, that my family and friends, their friends, everyone drinks a lot and they're all on medications. And it's like, okay, what are you doing to yourself? And it doesn't seem to be an issue, but they don't correlate, and doctors don't say anything that you should not have alcohol with all those medications, but there's going to be some bad results in your gut or body.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that we continue moving in this direction where we are just becoming more informed. Unfortunately, people are just not so informed on the topic. And we often have to seek out this information. And sometimes we have to seek it out before it's too late, right? Like part of the reason why I feel so passionately about sharing this is because I feel like I found out too late. I ended up at a point in my life where I was drinking every single day, and I felt like I couldn't stop. But I wasn't always that way, right? It had escalated over time, as it does for so many people. And so a lot of it now is, how do we get this information to people? How do we help educate people on this topic so that they can maybe make this choice before they feel like they're a little bit more out of control, or that it has affected their health so significantly that there is, more damage to the body.
So much to ask you and go into more, but I know we're out of time already. But your book is How to Eat to Change How You Drink. And you've got lots of information in the book. How would you get people to read your book? And do you have programs to help them follow through, like a 4-week program? What do you do with people to help them?
Yeah, so I have an online program and online courses. It's called Functional Sobriety. You can learn more about it at functionalsobriety.com, but it is for people of all backgrounds who are just looking for a nutrition and functional medicine-based approach to alcohol reduction. So we do that through the lens of nutrition and supplementation, and addressing these areas like the gut and blood sugar, et cetera. And so I also work with people one-on-one to do more of that individualized testing. But the book is really a great way to get started. It's kind of we'll walk you through a 4-week plan to cut back. It's going to walk you through a lot of these details and how alcohol is affecting the body. And so it's really, the book is a great place to start. It's available wherever books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you get your books, you can also get
That's about it. Most sadly, Barnes and Noble and Amazon.
Target. There's
Oh, yeah.
a couple others still out there, but not many. wherever books are sold, but also Kindle and Audible. And if you get the Audible, I will read it to you. So if you
Oh,
like
good
the
for
sound
you.
of my voice, I will read it to you. Yeah, so, but it's something that you can also check out my Instagram, Dr. Brooke Scheller, and I provide a lot of information, little tips and tricks and stats on there. So what my recommendation is if you're listening and you're intrigued by this, just start exploring a little bit, start getting a little bit more knowledge around it, pick up a book, pick up How to Eat to Change How You Drink, maybe listen to some other podcasts on alcohol and alcohol reduction, and just trust your gut if it feels like something that's right to do. I know that my life has completely unlocked in so many ways after eliminating alcohol, and I've seen it happen with thousands of people. And it's something that I think everyone can stand to benefit from.
Yeah, I found you from mutual friends, Todd Durkin and Cynthia Thurlow, and just started following you on Instagram, and sharing what you're sharing on there is just a pretty great place to start, because you see the infographics on the nutrient deficiencies or how alcohol impacts you. I think that's a great way to start, even sharing those with other people, and people can pay it forward, because I think people think one drink is not going to hurt them, and that, people in Italy have all this wine every night. Why don't we have the health benefits from drinking wine? And so I know we can't go into that probably now, but just people don't realize how much alcohol might be impacting them unless they remove it probably for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an important topic, and one that I really believe that, like I said, everyone can benefit from reduction, and even if it's not for you, you probably know someone who can benefit from the information too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for following your purpose and your passion and your mission, which is what Todd Durkin taught me. So you're doing what he always promotes in our mastermind: purpose,
My
passion.
uncle.
Amazing. So keep doing what you're doing, because I don't think there's enough people, or I don't know who else is in your space really promoting it this way. So keep on creating that huge impact in our society. We need it.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks so much for having me. It was great to be here today.